The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
There are other places to listen to stories about sports today, things that are happening in the sports world. But if you've had enough of Indiana football, those are the places that you might want to go, because I know you can't see it, but I'm wearing my Indiana Dad t-shirt after watching my son's alma mater complete one of the most remarkable turnarounds we've ever seen at any time in sports. Professional, amateur, you name it. It's an incredible story with an incredible game to finish it off with a signature play which will one day lead to a statue outside of IU Stadium of Fernando Mendoza diving over the goal line with the football, as Indiana has finished the first 16-0 season since 1894 when Yale did it. You know, there was a time when there were limits on the number of college football games that were played. For a long time, it was 9. Then it became 10. Then you had to have 11. It stayed 11 for a long time. Then they made it 12. 12 in a bowl game, 13 games. That's enough. No. Nope. We got to have a 16-team playoff. And had Indiana, I guess they wouldn't have been able to be undefeated and play 17 games. But if somehow they would have had to not have that first round bye, it could have been 17 games. And, who knows? The lack of respect that Indiana football got. They had that incredible win at Penn State. And there was some discussion on that polling show that's done on ESPN. Well, maybe they should be behind now Texas A&M because they had an easier win. No, if you're number 2 and you're undefeated and you stay undefeated, you should stay number 2. But that's the kind of respect that they were getting. That's not the case anymore. I'll get to where they rank all time in a little bit. But this is personal for me, not just because of my son. Yes, this is a Hoosiers music, and it's not really anything like the movie. This is not a small-town team from fictional Milan with a coach who had been in college, and you get a hint that he had punched a player, so he has to wind up in this small Indiana town with a group of basketball players who, really don't want to listen to coaching, and the star player doesn't want to play anymore, and all the different things. So this is not that. This is not that. This is in an era of big money in college football. The quarterback last night from Miami was paid $4 million. The guy who replaces him may get twice as much as that. It's the way it is right now. And the playing field is such that, A, you got to have a really good coach, which they have in Curt Cignetti. You got to have really good players like a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. And you have to have money. You have to have money to do it. But you have to spend money the right way. And what we saw last night was an example of not the haves and the have-nots, because I don't know if Indiana's football budget with the NIL was significantly lower than Miami, but it's the right type of players. And Miami had 45 4- or 5-star high school recruits. Indiana had 8. And they had a quarterback who grew up in Miami, painting his face orange and green and going to games at the University of Miami Stadium. For a long time, it was the Orange Bowl. I guess he never went to the Orange Bowl. It would have been Hard Rock Stadium where they played last night. And they didn't recruit him. They didn't want him. He was going to go to Yale. He got a last-minute offer from Cal, played there for 3 years. And here comes Curt Cignetti, who saw something and said, come to Indiana and help us win a national championship. And he did. And it's remarkable. And I think back 50 years ago, at the end of March, I was driving home with my parents from a visit to Syracuse. I was considering going to Syracuse, as many people in my business have done and thrived, and I wound up not going there. But driving home, the national championship basketball game was on, and it was Indiana playing Michigan. And Indiana was going for 30-0, a perfect season. And in some ways, they were like Indiana football this year, but in other ways they really weren't. I mean, they had established stars. Scott May was the best player in the country, and Scott May had broken his arm the year before on their way to the Final Four. They made it, but lost to UCLA, and that was their only loss of the season. The next year, they want to complete the job. They get it done against Michigan in the championship game, even though they lost Bobby Wilkerson, their best defender, early in the game with a concussion. But they gutted it out, and they won. And that is the last team to finish undefeated in college basketball. It may be the last team ever. And in football, we've had undefeated teams, but we've never had an undefeated team play 16 games. And this Hoosier team did it. And on top of that, it's the place where it happened. Because when I was growing up, thinking about going to college, unless you were brilliant and thinking about Harvard or Yale, more than likely you were going to wind up going to the University of Maryland, maybe staying locally like I did at American or Georgetown or Penn State, someplace, relatively close. A place like Indiana. There was a girl in my high school class. They put out the list of where all the seniors were going to go. She was going to Indiana. Where the hell was Indiana? And then, as life takes its twists and its turns, I wind up being an Indiana dad. And I go to Indiana games with my son, and there's nobody there because Indiana football stinks. The kids tailgate, and they go back to their dorms. Doesn't matter if they're playing a Big Ten game. That's Indiana football. And for many years, I bloviated that, there's a handful of schools around the country where winning a basketball championship is bigger than winning a football championship. Kentucky would be one, Duke would be another, Maryland would be another, and Indiana for sure. And boy, was I wrong. What we saw unfold over the last few weeks was absolutely stunning. And wherever they went, including the home field of Miami last night, where tickets were going for $7,000, $8,000 a piece, even at the last minute when people start to panic about having leftover tickets. The get-in price last night, 20 minutes before the game, was still $4,000. That's how popular it was for Indiana people, and they flooded Miami. They flooded Southern California for the Rose Bowl. They flooded Atlanta. It was an amazing thing to watch. It was a sleeping giant. And it's an example of what can happen if you got the right guy in the right place with the right players and the right kind of leadership that tells him this is your destiny, essentially. And I'm paraphrasing here, but in recounting how he wound up at Indiana, remember, Curt Cignetti is not Bobby Knight. There's a lot of comparisons there because of his demeanor, that he's never really satisfied. And Cignetti has talked about what an admirer he is of Bobby Knight, and I don't think you could get away with saying otherwise if you coach sports in Bloomington. But Bobby Knight was a boy wonder. He was a head coach at Army at the age of 24. I think he was 30, maybe even 29 when he was hired as the head coach at Indiana. And he won his national championship in his mid-30s. Curt Cignetti, son of a coach who never really made it to the top levels, coached at Indiana of Pennsylvania, a small school, coached well enough at that level to get into the Hall of Fame, the College Football Hall of Fame, but never made the big cash that you were going to make at the big schools. And Curt Cignetti followed in his footsteps, but went the path of assistant coach. And he was 49 years old, and he was at the top level of assistant coach. He was working under Nick Saban at Alabama. That's about as high as you can go on the assistant chain. But he said to himself, I'm 50 years old. I believe I can be a head coach, and I'm going to try and do it. And he went to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and he won there. And he wound up at Elon. That's not much of a jump. Nobody knew who he was at Elon. He won there. He goes to James Madison, wins big there, and then he gets a call to interview for the job at Indiana. Scott Dolson, the new athletic director, had recognized what he did at James Madison. And as Cignetti later recounted, he said he came home from the interview. It was a cold November night, 2023, gets in bed, lying there with his wife, and he says, I got an interview there, and it was fine, but I'm happy here. We're building something in Harrisonburg. We like living here. Why leave? Then the phone rang, and before Cignetti could say a word, Scott Dolson said, "Congratulations, you're the new Indiana coach, and we're going to kick some butt." Cignetti was nearly speechless, and we've heard him talking the last few weeks, so he's not at a loss for words. He said something like, I can't say here, words that he said. Maybe he said some curse words, but he hung up the phone and he said to his wife, he didn't give me a chance. And his wife said, you should have seen the look in your eye, like, what did I just do? And what he has done is nothing short of miraculous. This team won 27 games over the last 2 years. In the previous 3 years, they had lost 27. They were the losingest program in the history of college football. 715 games they've been topped in losses or bottomed in losses, however you want to put it, by Northwestern, a historically bad program which had a number of winless seasons back in the 80s. And to think that you could do this here at a place where not only football didn't matter, but if you weren't that good, it was going to be okay because everybody was looking forward to basketball season. That would be the great thrill is basketball, which my son was able to experience as a student when he was there when Christian Watford hit the buzzer beater to beat Kentucky, number 1 and undefeated at the time, and he stormed the court. And that team made the Sweet 16, and that's as far as they went. But this team went all the way, and it's not like NC State knocking off Houston in 83. That was a team that had to win the ACC tournament just to make it into the NCAAs and had some scares along the way, including a first-round game against Pepperdine that they were close to losing, which caused Jim Valvano to say survive and advance. And they did. And just an incredible occurrence in the game against Houston, a game that looks like it might be headed for overtime. And Akeem Olajuwon is so scared to foul that the winning shot is hit over him as he sits in stunned silence as the dunk goes in and Jimmy Valvano goes around looking for somebody to hug. Villanova, another team that had to struggle to get to the NCAA tournament. It's only reason they made it in 85 was they had expanded the field that year to 64. They wouldn't have made it the year before. And they knock off a team that was for the ages in Patrick Ewing and Georgetown. This is not that. This is a historically bad program. Coach comes in, relatively unknown, done some things at James Madison, but nobody in Bloomington had heard of that. Shows up at the basketball game and says, you know what? Purdue sucks. Every coach would say that. But he said, Ohio State sucks and Michigan sucks and we're going to beat them. And he did. And he did it. And he's not a showy guy. He's not a Vince McMahon type of guy. He's got sort of that quiet confidence and the chutzpah to say at his opening news conference, I win, Google me. And he did. And he continues to win. And it's one of the most amazing stories that has ever been written in the history of sports. That is not hyperbole. This is absolutely remarkable. And you think about the teams that they beat to do this. Now, the previous giant killer, and again, I can't think of them as giant killers, but you look at George Mason on their way to the Final Four, the Blue Bloods that they beat, North Carolina, Michigan State, and to get to the Final Four, they beat UConn. That's a little different. They weren't going to get to the Final Four and win. That wasn't going to happen. They were quickly humbled by Florida, which won the national championship. This team was the best team in football all year long. Well, you could say that Ohio State was, but Ohio State lost to Indiana on a neutral field in the Big Ten championship game and then lost to Miami, which lost to Indiana in the championship. Let me get to just some of the glorious highlights. There's so much reaction to get to and stuff that you may not have stayed up for last night to see that I want to go through. But this was, quite a moment, too, in that Don Fisher is pretty much what Johnny Holiday has been to the University of Maryland. He's had more basketball success than Johnny has had, but as bad as Maryland football has been for most of Don Fisher's career, Indiana football has been worse than Maryland. Yeah, they've been nowhere. And probably at this stage of his life, 52 years into being the voice of Indiana sports, he could not have dreamed that he would say something like this.
Here's the snapback. Beck looks, throws it down the field, and it is intercepted by Indiana. Wow, what a play! And it is Jamari Sharp who comes up with a pick, and he runs into the end zone. They're going to call a penalty. But Indiana,
And that was the clinching interception that cemented the win 27-21 for Indiana, its first ever national championship and the first 16-0 season since 1894. That was one of several big plays in this game. There was a block punt for a touchdown, which we'll get to later. But the signature play of this game and the signature play of Fernando Mendoza's career would be the touchdown run. A touchdown run that was, I mean, you had to see all the drama unfold. It's 4th and 5. Okay, you got a field goal there, but the clock's running down. And Cignetti, who always seems to be in charge of what he wants to do, is unsure. And there's plenty of time left on the play clock, too. I mean, you could have gotten the field goal unit out there and rushed it. Nope. Calls timeout. Timeout. He's thinking, I'm going to put the field goal unit back out there. Nope. He puts the offense back on the field. And this was the call that you heard from Chris Fowler if you were watching on TV.
Got to get to the 8. He's going to take off and run. Mendoza weaves his way first and goal, diving toward the end zone. Touchdown!
And the pictures tell the story there. The radio call, I don't have the Don Fisher call, but Sean McDonough, who is as good as anyone doing play-by-play, did the radio call on ESPN last night. This was the Sean McDonough call of the play that will live in infamy for the Indiana football team.
They're 1 for 1 on 4th down tonight. Mendoza's in the gun. The ball's on the 13-yard line. He's clapping as if they're going to snap it. They do snap it. He takes off running on a design quarterback draw. He has the first down. He spins into the end zone. What a play by Mendoza. And what a call. It was a design run. He bounced off a couple of hits. Looked like he was going to get the first down. He wasn't satisfied. It's another highlight reel play for Mendoza in a 9-point lead.
It's not another highlight reel play. It's the play for Fernando Mendoza.
A big concept that we've really had on ourselves this year is always betting on ourselves. Whether it's preseason, no one thinks we can make it. Whether it's figuring it out in situations like Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa, we've always figured it out. And whenever Coach Cignetti, Coach Shanahan, they called that play, we knew, hey, we're going to bet ourselves one more time in the biggest stage of the game. And at that point, I took the drop, and it wasn't the perfect coverage for it, but I trust my linemen, and everybody in that entire offense and entire team had a gritty performance today, and we're all putting our bodies on the line. So it's the least I could do for my brothers.
That is going to be the statue outside the stadium, him diving over the goal line with his arms outstretched and the football. What an iconic image from just an iconic game in an iconic season. I'm sorry to keep using that word. I just don't have a better one. Reese Davis conducted the post-game championship trophy celebration and went first to Mendoza, and then we'll get the comments that he got from Kurt Cignetti.
We know after that performance from a great Miami team that the U is back, but we also know that Indiana is here, and it looks like the Hoosiers are here to stay as national champions. We want to start by introducing our players of the game. The offensive player of the game for this national championship match, the Heisman Trophy winner from right here in Miami, the Indiana quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. Fernando, I know you've been asked a lot this week about what this return is like. Now that you're experiencing the national championship, hometown, leading Indiana to unprecedented heights, how do you describe what you're feeling right now?
I first want to give all the glory to God. And, I mean, there's no better group of guys I want to deal with. It's the most special moment of my life. There's such a great group of guys. I love you guys. Great job. Let's go!
There was a drive in this game where you guys converted 2 4th downs. You made a great throw to Charlie Becker, who made an unbelievable catch. And then the play that's going to go down in Indiana history. You're running through hurricanes. You're showing it on the board right now. And you dive for it. 4th and 5. What did you think of the call?
Everybody doubted us at the beginning of the year. We didn't make it this far, not to lay it on the line. Fourth down, we trust our guys. We trust our O-line. First fourth down, Charlie Becker, fantastic catch. Second fourth down, I would die for my guys in the field. Same way they do for myself. We put on the line, and we got that dub. Let's go.
You've had so many great moments. Has there been a better moment than that touchdown run in that spot?
No better moment, no better moment. We talked about this a year ago when we started spring and winter workouts. We're going to be a national champion contender. Everybody counted us out, but it's the optimism and self-belief we had in each other that got us to this point.
I don't know if you've seen it yet, but your parents celebrating that touchdown run is something to see. You ought to check it out. A lot of family members here. What do you think tonight's going to be like for you?
Oh, tonight's going to be an insane night, to say the least. I also can't wait to get back in Bloomington with the guys.
Fernando, congratulations. Quarterback of the national champions, 16-0.
Yeah, and it was kind of an insane night, as we found out later on. He went to one of the most exclusive clubs in the country. I mean, you got to be somebody like a Heisman Trophy winning national champion quarterback to get in. It's called the, I hope I got this right, E11 Even Club. The letter E, the number 11, the word even. It's a 24-hour club in South Beach where tables to sit down at cost you $1,500. You got to be famous. You got to have cash if you want to be there. Well, first you got to be famous to get in. Then you got to have the cash to stay there. And he did celebrate that way. By the way, the player who said, "I give all the glory to God," also did drop an F-bomb, which was edited out of that, which was national TV. He probably got caught up in the moment, but there's that. And then there's probably now the most famous coach in America, at least for the next week or so, and that's Curt Cignetti. And Reese Davis did the honors with him as well.
And now, the head coach of the first in the modern era, 16-0 team in the national champions, Curt Cignetti. Curt, you said, why not Indiana? Why can't we do it here? Now it's become reality. What's this moment like for you?
It's incredible. But, you know, when you got the right people in your organization, coaches and players, and you got a plan and great leadership, and they commit to getting better, anything's possible. What a gutty game. I give Miami a lot of credit. They played hard. We found a way. We were resilient and made one more play. What's this moment like for me? Back when I was waxing the staff table at IUP, Thanksgiving weekend, and the school was shut down for the playoffs, did I ever think something like this was possible? Probably not. But if you keep your nose down in life and keep working, anything is possible.
Tell me how long it took you to decide to go for it on the 4th and 4 with Fernando's touchdown run late in the fourth quarter.
That one took some thought. We went for it on 4th twice, I think, the series before, and came up with a couple things that worked, and guys made plays. Ran the field goal team out there, didn't feel good about it, called a timeout. They were in the perfect coverage the play before. We banked they'd be in it again. It was a new play for them. It was just quarterback draw, but we blocked it different. He ran a linebacker over. His will, you know, he wasn't going to be denied. Great play by him. Great job up front. Great job tonight. Great job by our fans.
You said at the Rose Bowl that this would make a hell of a movie. Well, this is a great way to end it. So what do you want to say to these fans on the occasion of bringing Indiana its first national championship?
Best fans in America. I know what cheer you like the best. Did you ever think this was possible? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Who, John?
And as you've heard Cignetti say in his other post-game interviews along the way to the championship and the way he's going to celebrate, he said, "I'm going to crack open a beer, only one, because at my age, if I drink 2, I fall asleep." So finally, and this was pursued heavily by the media leading up to the game, what kind of beer would it be?
Hoosier beer from Upland Brewery, okay? Big brewery in Bloomington, Indiana. Throw a little bouquet out to them. Yeah, absolutely. It was the best beer I've ever had in my life and made me want to have another.
He was still awake, so maybe he only had one. But Hoosier beer to celebrate the national championship for the Hoosier coach leading Indiana to its first ever football championship and the first 16-0 season since, 1894. We'll get to more reaction to the national championship coming up. There's some other things going on, including the coaching go-round, which claimed another one yesterday as Sean McDermott is out in Buffalo. Reaction to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
More reaction to Indiana's perfect season and the national championship coming up. I almost said miracle season. Again, not a miracle season. This team lost 2 games last year. One to Louisville. People forget that. And many remember the national title playoffs, not the national title game, but when they had to play their opening game at Notre Dame. And they lost 27-17, and it really wasn't that close. Indiana got a couple of late scores to make it closer. And people like Kirk Herbstreit said, oh, yeah, well, thanks for playing, but, who did they beat this year? And, what are they doing in a 12-team playoff? And then this year they didn't lose a single game and beat Blue Bloods along the way, like defending champion Ohio State, Alabama, which they clobbered, Oregon, which has been known for spending money long before it was legal to spend money. Not that they spent illegally, but they had many enticements to get them to Oregon, and then to beat the U. And the U was going for its 6th title since 1984. So, in 42 years, they had won 5. Indiana won 0 since they started playing football and had been, until Cignetti arrived, the losingest football program in the United States of America. As for the NFL, not, I guess, a total shocker yesterday, but as we were doing the show, the news came out that Sean McDermott had been fired after their overtime loss to Denver. That's a guy who has had great success. The Bills had been down for many years, and he made it to the playoffs 8 times in his 9 years as the head coach, but he didn't get him to the big one. And so enough is enough, thought ownership, and Sean McDermott was fired. Albert Breer covers the NFL for SI.com. He was on with Dan Patrick yesterday.
I'm surprised, but I think there were, and I think he was surprised, but there were some tea leaves. I think Josh Allen's emotional press conference. I think McDermott, you could kind of see, with the criticism of the officials the first time and then coming back the second time, I think you could kind of feel that there was heat on everybody there, and that the window to win a championship, like the owners were feeling that and feeling the pressure of being within that. And, I think a couple months ago, I used the Tony Dungy comparison with you, Dan, and I think it's an apt one. That's the way I see this is, Sean McDermott did a ton of good in Buffalo. They hadn't been to the playoffs in 18 years. He was there for 9. They make it in 8 of those 9 years, 7 in a row, 5 AFC East titles, 2 AFC championship games, a franchise quarterback. Like all these things were unimaginable for the Bills when he got there. But, the same way it was with Tony Dungy when he rebuilt the Bucs, the owners down there felt this shrinking window with that team they had with, Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp and John Lynch and Rondé Barber. And I think sort of the same thing with the quarterback in Buffalo. There's a feeling like we're not going to get a million shots at this, so we need to strike while the iron's hot.
So what's Buffalo do?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a coach, don't you?
Yeah. But Baltimore is as well.
Right. I just look at like this with Josh Allen and the chance to do this and compete for a championship. Like, if this job were to come open again in 3 or 4 years with the amount of damage he's taken, like we don't know that it's going to be the same Josh Allen, So if I'm the Bills, I'm taking full advantage of that. And that means you're going to interview all the usual suspects, the names that we've heard, over the course of the last couple of weeks. And there's some really good candidates out there, some of them on the defensive side of the ball, which, maybe the Bills shy away from that now because they just did spend 9 years going down that path with McDermott. But why not take big swings if you're Buffalo? Why not just see?
Well, who's the big swing?
I mean, we'll call the Rams, and I'm not saying those guys would be available, but, when you have that quarterback and you're in this situation and you might be able to entice them just to see how their situation is, why wouldn't you do it? I mean, I that's the way I look at it, right? Like, it's like if I'm Buffalo, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, like, we are in a once in a lifetime window. This is a really hard place to be. We got a quarterback who carried an incredibly heavy load this year, and we want to take some of that off of him. And we can offer somebody the chance to do that and compete for championships right away with a roster that's still pretty good. And has a lot of young pieces on it. I think you have to take advantage of that opportunity. And what that opportunity looks like, it's going to be in the eye of the beholder. But, I mean, the one thing I can't shake is, like, Josh Allen turning 30 this offseason. There's the chance for someone to get in there and compete for championships right away and change the narrative on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And if you're going to make this bold a move to get rid of a coach that accomplished that much over 9 years, I think your hire has to be bold as well.
Okay, but why wouldn't we say the same thing about Baltimore? They've got the 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson.
I'd agree. It's fair. It's a fair thing to say. I just think if you look at Baltimore's success, it goes past Lamar, right? And they've always been so stable and able to build for so long. And they've got Eric DeCosta, who was groomed by Ozzie Newsome for the job. And this has been who the Ravens are for 25 years. And they found John Harbaugh, like, kind of going an unconventional route. And so, like, I think it's a little different. There's just some nuance there where, like, I think with Baltimore, as good as Lamar is, and I think Lamar's great, you know what I think of Lamar. I think it's just a little bit of a different spot than Buffalo, where you look at it and it's just so much has been built around that one player. You know what I mean? Where, man, if we've invested this much to getting it right with the quarterback, we need to get the coach right.
That's SI's Albert Breer with Dan Patrick. Now on the coaching of Josh Allen, yes, Sean McDermott, the head coach, is gone. Whoever takes his place might want to keep Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, or maybe not. Maybe that's part of the problem. But Brady reportedly got an interview with the Ravens yesterday about their vacancy. They also have talked to Robert Saleh, who may wind up as coach in Tennessee. But it's getting, what are we, 2.5 weeks now since Black Monday. I would think that things would ramp up to some degree, that we'll have some more head coaches hired in the next few days. That's the facts on that. Now the react. Steve Tasker is one of the great players in Bills history. He's been on the ballot for the Hall of Fame. Great special teams player, was part of all 4 of the Bills Super Bowl teams, and now does radio and television in Buffalo. And he came on a little bit later and was asked by Dan about his reaction to the firing.
Very surprised. Yeah, in my of course, I'm one of those guys that played a long time in the league and appeared in a Super Bowl, never won a Super Bowl. So you can take this with a grain of salt, because I don't know what it is to win a championship, but having a swing at it every year is pretty important, I think. The Bills were right there, and most of the losses they've suffered during Sean's tenure were almost so unique. You almost had a name for them. It took a really incredible, and let's say this, in the Denver game this last week, and the Bills team didn't play well. Josh didn't play well. The defense didn't play well. They just didn't play their best, and almost still found a way to win that game. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, particularly I'm in the building every day, and when you change, it's a little like Dan. It's a little bit like the Dan Patrick show, losing Dan Patrick. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are affected by it, and you can't take that for granted. It's going to be a big change and a huge transition for the organization. You don't know what's going to happen the next few weeks, so we'll see. But you can't overstate what he has meant to the franchise, what he did for him, the culture he established, what he's meant to the community, the example he's been to his players. I know his players revere him. Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely enormous transition process.
All right, and that's Tasker is obviously close to McDermott. This is more on the human side of it, and these guys make a lot of money. That's understood, but it's not just the coach who gets fired here; it's the staff. And the staff doesn't make that kind of money. And they've got families, and they got to move from place to place. So this is a pretty good view, I think, from Tasker with Dan Patrick about what it's like when a head coach loses his job and what it means to the entire staff.
But I wonder if because everybody made a big deal of no Lamar, no Mahomes, no Burrow, it's wide open, you guys should be going to the Super Bowl, that raised the stakes here for Sean McDermott. Certainly with Josh Allen, but Sean McDermott's the one who paid the ultimate price here.
Yeah, maybe. I still don't think you get to this point of the playoffs and don't meet good football teams. Patriots played an outstanding game against a really good Houston Texans team. Certainly, you can tell C.J. Stroud doesn't belong in the same conversation as Josh Allen, in my opinion. Drake May has got a solid coaching staff and a great roster around him and has played extremely well, very efficient all year. Stafford, same thing. So yeah, that you can make a case that the deck was cleared from the quarterback's position, but you still got to beat the entire team, and it's still not going to be easy for New England to go into Denver and beat Jarrett Stidham. Although in hindsight, I mean, man, oh man, you shake your head at the twists and turns of the season, and this last one certainly has got to be enticing for Patriot fans going in there with Drake May, the MVP candidate, going against Jarrett Stidham, a New England draft pick back in the day.
And I know this is still fresh, this wound, but could you see a scenario where the Bills brought back Brian Daboll as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Buffalo guy, grew up here, you know. I know he's well thought of in the building. I'm sure they're going to scour the landscape for the right guy. And I think even if it takes a little bit of extra time, one of the things that the Bills learned during the drought, it's not just about picking the right guy, it's about getting them to say yes as well. I think it's more important to get the right guy than to get the guy in the next week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Even if it takes 3 or 4 weeks or a month, if it's the right guy, you'll be fine, even in the first year. So, yeah, Brian Daboll would be on the list. I think there's a number of guys that are on the list. They may not even go offensive guy. They may go leadership. May go like a Mike Tomlin or Brian Flores or something like that as well. There's some quality guys out there, really quality guys. But there's only 32 jobs, and you've got one of them, and you got to make sure that the guy you get is going to fit not just the spot where you're at now, because there's a lot of guys that'll fit with Josh Allen as their quarterback. You got to have a guy who's got a plan going forward.
Help me understand ownership there. They don't strike me as, we're going to make a quick decision on firing Sean McDermott. I don't know if they're reactionary in that way. He'd been there 9 years, but do you think this was in the works? Do you think he was actually coaching for his job yesterday?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a little bit of exasperation, and I think they probably got some, there is a little bit, even though each of these laws that I mentioned, it's hard to beat this team. I mean, they're a tough out. They're even during the regular season, they have to help you almost to get a tough out. But even that whole strength of through the 9 years that Sean was here, that became a little bit of the characteristic of the team. So maybe to get out of that, of having these massively unusual and weird and close last minute, weird official call, missed call, whatever you want to call them, that's the trait that they're trying to change. And the head coach is probably their answer to, is Terry Pagula's answer to it, Brandon Beane's answer to it. They do have, all the losses have had a quirky characteristic that is always there. They're trying to find a way to get around that, I think. Sean was an incredible ambassador for Buffalo. I feel for he and his wife, Jamie, and all the guys on the staff, because all these coaches go into limbo. It's a little more personal for me maybe than it's ever been, because Sean's been here for almost a decade. He's an outstanding human being. He'll be a little bit along the lines of the Mike Tomlin firing earlier this year. If he wants to work, people will hire him. But I'll say this, it's hard. it's hard to say goodbye to a place like this. It's hard for people in this building to say goodbye to Sean and his family. They've been a big part of our lives, and everybody in this building owes their job to him, right? So it's a deeply personal thing, and I know that while we talk about it at an arm's length level, it's a rough day here in Buffalo, no question about it.
So that's the human side of it from Steve Tasker, one of the Buffalo Bills greats and now broadcaster, radio and TV for the team, as they look for a coach for the first time in 10 years. Hard to believe he's back. Rex Ryan's been out of Buffalo for 10 years. The time just goes by crazily fast. All right, coming up, more reaction to the championship game, plus more about what's happening in the NFL. And it was 65 years ago today that JFK delivered one of the most memorable inaugural speeches in history. We'll get to that more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. 65 years ago today, on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, the newly elected president said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." It's considered to be the most memorable line from one of the most memorable inaugural addresses ever delivered, and we'll go through some of that later in the show. There was a feeling of vigor in the country at the time, and with what Indiana did last night, maybe there's some new vigor for a sport that, let's face it, has been, dumped upon recently because of all the money and the excess, and a sport that used to be considered pure, but certainly is not now, and the term student athlete has become pretty much of a joke. But the good old-fashioned feel of what hard work and commitment and teamwork means was illustrated not just last night by Indiana, what they did to a team that was really good and with talented players and highly paid players. Indiana had paid players too, but they didn't have the superstars, at least the perceived superstars, that Miami had, with 45 guys on the team who were 4- and 5-star high school recruits. Indiana had eight of them. And they did it with transfers, but they did it with transfers from the previous stop for Curt Cignetti, 13 of them coming over from James Madison. If you're playing football at James Madison, the NFL isn't looking at you too closely unless you really stand out. That's a place you go to get a degree, play college sports, have a good time, and get on with your life. It's the big time, but it ain't the big time. And so what he was able to accomplish, Cignetti, in the last 2 years, can't say it enough, absolutely remarkable. When Indiana alums get together years from now and relive the magical 2025 season, they will talk about one play more than any other. And it's a play that I believe will lead to a statue of Fernando Mendoza outside the stadium at Indiana. And it was a 4th and 4 play. And it's really, the season wasn't necessarily on the line on that play because there was a lot of time left in the game, but it was such a pivotal point in the game. And the career of Fernando Mendoza, you think of John Elway, and I was at that Super Bowl against the Packers, and he was able to cement that game with a run. One of the great passers of all time, took off with the ball. He was in his late 30s, and he got hit so hard he helicoptered for a first down. He got helicoptered in the air and got in, took the big hit for his team, knowing that he would finally get that Super Bowl, which had eluded him for 14, 15 years. And Fernando Mendoza played in kind of anonymity at Cal for 3 years. Good player, maybe on the radar for the NFL. Now moves to Indiana, and he becomes not only the quarterback of the undefeated national championship team, he becomes the Heisman Trophy winner. And he's a guy kind of like the coach. He smart guy, worked hard, was not looked at as a prospect in his hometown of Miami, where he used to attend games with his face painted, rooting for the Hurricanes. He lived 2 miles from the stadium, and they didn't want him. And he goes back to that stadium, wins a national championship. But he wasn't pressing his nose up against Curt Cignetti's window. He kind of had to be convinced to come to Indiana.
Coach Sig betting on himself, going from Alabama, then going back down to D2, and all these other guys, really betting on himself and self-believing. It was a very tough decision to transfer for myself. However, when I got here or on the visit, he sold me on developing and that I could become the best Fernando Mendoza possible, and with a hell of a great group of guys. At that point, I knew it was a no-brainer, and just can't thank Coach Sig, Coach Shanahan, and Coach Whitmer enough. They're always sticking through with me through the thick and thin of this entire season.
And this was the play that will always be associated with Fernando Mendoza, called smartly and excellently by Sean McDonough on ESPN.
They're 1 for 1 on 4th down tonight. Mendoza's in the gun. The ball's on the 13-yard line. He's clapping as if they're going to snap it. They do snap it. He takes off running on a design quarterback draw. He has the first down. He spins into the end zone. What a play by Mendoza. And what a call. It was a design run. He bounced off a couple of hits. Looked like he was going to get the first down. He wasn't satisfied. It's another highlight reel play for Mendoza in a 9-point lead.
And you can call it a chutzpah play. You can call it a play where scared money don't make money. They went for it, and this was how Mendoza explained it.
A big concept that we've really had on ourselves this year is always betting on ourselves. Whether it's preseason, no one thinks we can make it. Whether it's figuring it out in situations like Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa, we've always figured it out. And whenever Coach Signetti, Coach Shanahan, they called that play, we knew, hey, we're going to bet ourselves one more time in the biggest stage of the game. And at that point, I took the drop, and it wasn't the perfect coverage for it, but I trust my linemen, and everybody in that entire offense and entire team had a gritty performance today, and we're all putting our bodies on the line. So it's the least I could do for my brothers.
And when they called the timeout, they were going to kick the field goal. Signetti has second thoughts. They call a timeout. Even you hear the call from McDonough there. He says they're acting like they're going to snap it because it's 4th and 4. A hard count maybe pulls them off. They get the first down. But he goes through with the play. And it was Signetti, who I'm sure when he was considering what to do, knew that Mendoza was the man for the moment.
Let me tell you, Fernando, I know he's great at interviews and comes off as the All-American guy, but he has the heart of a lion when it comes to competition. I mean, that guy competes like a warrior, and, he got really smacked a few times in this game. That one drive we kicked the field goal, there should have been two roughing the quarterbacks and one high hit to the head that weren't called. I'm all for letting them play, but when they cross the line, you got to call them. And I can't say enough about his effort on that play and our team finding a way to get it done.
Yeah, actually, when he's walking off for the first half interview, if you missed this, Signetti was complaining about, he said we should have gotten the 3 roughing the passer calls and we didn't get them. I don't know if that helped him or hurt him in the second half, because I thought the majority of the calls went against Indiana. I really do. I mean, they missed some things, and they missed a targeting penalty on Mendoza early in the game. So there were some things that were missed. Maybe the home field had something to do with it. I don't know. But that didn't help them, and they still were able to overcome it. Also, what's forgotten, what will be forgotten even more with the Mendoza touchdown, is what a big play they made on special teams. And this ties into the ultimate team win. The defense was great. They stopped the Miami running game for the most part. I mean, they did get a 57-yard touchdown, but they're a great team. They did what they needed to do, and pass defense was spectacular. I don't think they got a pass interference call all night, and they were playing it tight. They let them play for sure, but the way they played defense was great, and special teams. And a team can go through an entire season, maybe even 2 seasons, without a blocked punt. Indiana in 3 games had 2 blocked punts in the playoffs, 4 touchdowns. And they had another one last night.
So Dylan Joyce back on. Blocked! Indiana blocks the punt and falls on it for a touchdown!
Yeah, and there you go. So at that point, still a close game. They get a return. Maybe they can get another touchdown. Maybe they get a field goal. Things start to get really tight for Miami after that play. And actually, I was surprised about this because they seem to be very well schooled and they know exactly what they're going to do on every play. According to Signetti and Mikhail Kamara, who blocked the punt, this was not a block play that they had on. It was a return.
This was actually a return, and Mikhail blocked the punt. We didn't have punt block called. And Nadukwe's done it a couple times as well. And you can take it away.
Pretty much there was a punt before where we were in defensive safe, and I feel like I was kind of close. So the second time, the time that I blocked it, I was like, I'm just going to shoot my shot. And I just watched the ball, got off the ball as fast as I could, shot my shot, and I heard that double thug.
Yeah, it wasn't even touched. It was terribly schemed for Miami. I don't think they had any idea they were going to try and block the punt because it was, near the goal line. Normally, you play it safe there. You don't want to get a roughing the kicker penalty, which would set up a first down for Miami. And so I don't think they thought it was coming. And Indiana really didn't have it set up to be the play that it was, but it was, and it was a big factor in the game. And I think of my days watching football with Bill Malinchak, who was an expert punt blocker for the Redskins on their way to the Super Bowl in 1972, who blocked a punt on their first Monday night game, the Monday night opener against the Minnesota Vikings. Pretty cool stuff. More Signetti wisdom, I think, and again, it's so eloquent after this game as this story is being told and thought about and who's going to play Signetti in the movie and all that. This is how he would express what he would tell people about how they were able to do it and why it's so significant.
I think we sent a message, first of all, to society that if you keep your nose to the grindstone and work hard and you got the right people, anything's possible. In our particular situation in the athletic world, college football's changed quite a bit, the balance of power also. But we had the right people on our staff, in the weight room, in the locker room. And we had great senior leadership and togetherness, and we had a really good quarterback that played his best when the chips were down. And if you prepare the right way, which this team did week in, week out, and put it on the field, we met the challenge every single week, and we're 16-0. Are there 8 first-round draft choices on this team? Probably not. No, there aren't. But this team, the whole was greater than the sum of its parts.
No question, and evidenced by huge play on special teams, the interception to seal the game, great play on defense, along with a great night for the defense, and, of course, Fernando Mendoza and the offense operating the way that they did. Other than a couple of drops and a false start, which was really shaky at the end. They had a chance to knee out the game had they picked up a first down on 2nd and 1. They get a false start, forces them to kick a field goal, leaves time on the clock for Miami. But other than that, it's as good an all-around effort as you will ever see. Last part, and I'm sure this will be in the movie when it happens, and my only question is the Billy Bob Thornton role. Is he going to play Curt Cignetti, or is he going to play the dad? I think he's reached the age where he's probably going to play the dad. He was young enough to play the coach in, I think it was Gary Grimes was the name of the coach in Friday Night Lights. In the movie, I imagine he plays the dad, and I'm not sure who would play Curt Cignetti. But the relationship with his dad formed him. And, there are a lot of guys who rise to the top in whatever sport they're working in, and they got their start like I would make a comparison here to like Cal Ripken. While Cal's dad, Cal Sr., ultimately became a manager in the major leagues, his life's work was working with young players and developing them in the Orioles system as a minor league coach, and that helped to develop Cal as a player. Now, Cal never managed, but I kind of think of that relationship in the same way that Curt Cignetti thinks of his relationship with his dad, that you get taught the right way to do things. And here's how he expressed that.
I thought about him after the game when I stuck my 2 fingers in the air, and then Big Ten Network asked me about him, and I said, "Oh, you want me to get all choked up, right?" When we went from FCS to FBS in the Sun Belt, our first game, he was in a coma. And we beat that FBS team 48-10 in the opener. And my family told me in the hospital that we'd won 48-10, and they said he smiled. And then we had a great win against Appalachia State the week after he died down there after they beat A&M. We were down 28-3 in the second quarter, came back and won. So hopefully he was watching today. He was a great role model. I was very blessed to have a father like that.
Yeah, I think about that for many people my age. He's about my age, that you reach this point, this pinnacle in your life, and your parents aren't around to share it anymore. In this case, he lost his father even younger because of cancer. And on a night where you reach the mountaintop like that, your thoughts go to your dad and how you were formed by it. And, talk about this all the time with my grandchildren, how my mother just absolutely loved kids, loved my kids, loved my sister's kids, and didn't live, of course, to see my grandchildren born. And we see them do things and go, wow, wouldn't that be great if my mother could see that? And I think Kurt Signetti, has to be thinking the same thing. So in the movie, that relationship is going to have to be developed so that when at the end, when he points to the sky, you get the flashbacks of the dad telling him to do it the right way. I mean, it's just so. Again, this is one of those stories that you say if you tried to sell it as a Hollywood script, they wouldn't buy it, right? Oh no, this is too far fetched. And we've already had Hoosiers, and Hoosiers, while it's based on a true story, there's a lot of embellishment there. There weren't 6 players left on the team. There was not a game where there were 4 on the court and the coach says, my team is on the court. They had played well the year before. They had made it deep into the tournament. They had good players. They had players like Bobby Plump, who hit the winning shot, who played at Butler. I mean, it wasn't what it was in the movie. This is the real thing. And it's also not a bunch of, they call themselves misfits. Maybe so. But you did have the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and you did have an undefeated season, and you did have a team that had been really good the year before. And you have a different way of building things now than in the past, where you couldn't just bring in players without sitting out a year, and you couldn't pay them the most amount of money to come, and you didn't have the Mark Cuban wallet to do it and things like that. But even still, it's a level playing field. They played the right way. They showed us that, as they say, sometimes the good guys win. Coming up, we'll talk about where this Indiana team ranks, more react from the game, and what Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, who broadcast the game, said about the performance and where this team ranks, and much more. It's the Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So we keep going back to the movie themes on what happened with Indiana last night. And in some ways, it's like the movie Hoosiers. In some ways, it isn't. I've heard comparisons to the movie Miracle, which was about the 1980 Olympic hockey team. I don't know. I mean, I think that that's a much bigger underdog story than this, because in this case, you took established players, but the attitude of the coach is very similar. And this is maybe my favorite scene in the movie Miracle. It's the one where the coach, Herb Brooks, is running the tryouts, trying to figure out who's going to be on his roster. And Kurt Russell, who should have won an Academy Award playing Herb Brooks, is talking to Noah Wiley, who is playing a real-life person, Craig Patrick, who actually played a couple years for the Caps in the late 70s, 77, 79, became the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I had that wrong. I thought he'd been the GM of the Caps. GM of the Penguins, Craig Patrick, played by Noah Wiley. And they're looking down on the rink from Herb Brooks' office. He's got the glasses, halfway down his nose, and he's got a sheet of paper that he hands to his assistant, Craig Patrick, played by Wiley. And this was the exchange on the construction of the roster.
What's this?
26 names. The tough part will be getting it down to 20 before the opening ceremonies.
This is the final roster? You're kidding me, right? This is our first day, Herb. We got a week of this. What about the advisory staff? Aren't they supposed to have a say in this?
Technically, I guess.
You're missing some of the best players.
I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones.
You're missing some of the best players. I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones. And for a coach who comes into a basketball school, goes down on the basketball court in front of the fans, the kids, the students, the boosters, and says, we're going to beat Ohio State, we're going to beat Michigan, and he's brought in his guys, and 13 of them are from James Madison. Probably not the best players, but the right players, and the right players who finish off an undefeated season. So we get to the point now where we're looking at this team all time. Can you compare it to teams of even 5, 6, 7 years ago where you weren't legally allowed to pay them money, where the transfer portal didn't exist, that if you had to transfer schools or wanted to transfer schools, you had to sit out a year? Yeah, things are a lot different. So if you lined up this team against some of those teams, maybe they win by 3 touchdowns. But you can only compare to how these teams stack up in the era that they played in. So SI.com put together this list of, they had it at 6, the top 6 teams of all time, all from this century. Clemson, they have, of 2018, number 6. They finished 15-0. Deshaun Watson threw for over 5,000 yards. He had 50 touchdowns, 41 through the air, 9 rushing. They beat Alabama 44-16. I mean, that's not just beating Nick Saban. That's clobbering Nick Saban and Alabama. The team, the program ever in college football when you combine Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. They beat them 44-16. They ranked them number 6. Number 5 is the last Miami championship team of 2001. Some of the players on that team, mind-blowing. Ed Reed, maybe the best free safety of all time. Sean Taylor was on that team. Clinton Portis played on that team. They had 6 All-Americans. Ken Dorsey was the quarterback. They beat Nebraska 37-14 to win the national championship in after the 2001 season. They rank at number 4, Florida State of 2013. They finished 14-0, beat Auburn in the championship game, and it was a close one, 34-31. Jameis Winston was the quarterback of that team. I believe the last Heisman Trophy winning quarterback to lead a team to the national championship, Jameis Winston, the 2013 season. They rank this Indiana team number 3 all time. Think about that, 100-1 shot to get to the national championship game. A team that had been historically bad, had won 3 games prior to the year that Cignetti arrived, and they are ranked number 3 all time. They rank ahead of them, and I think you could make a case that Indiana may actually be better than this team because the playing field was a lot different this particular year. But they ranked the 2020 Alabama team 13-0. That was the COVID year, so they're not playing in front of fans. Some schools cut their schedule in half or played just a few games, so it's kind of hard to tell here. But they had great players on that team. Devontae Smith won the Heisman Trophy. He's the last Heisman Trophy winner to play on a national championship team. They finished up 13-0, and they beat Ohio State 52-24 for the national title. And then number 1, and I would have no argument, this is the best team that I've ever seen. And I just look at these 3 skilled players who you could make the case are among the top 5 in the NFL, every one of them. Joe Burrow was the quarterback. He threw for 5,600 yards, 60 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions the whole year. The image of him smoking a cigar after they won was huge. Justin Jefferson was on that team, and Jamar Chase. Okay, who wouldn't want to have a pair of receivers like that? Those are arguably 1 and 2 in the NFL in receivers, and Joe Burrow was the quarterback. They averaged 48 points a game. They beat Clemson in the national championship game, 42-25. So of this century, for sure, I think you can make the case that this list isn't too bad. That they rank Clemson of 2018, number 6, Miami of 2001, number 5, Florida State 2013 with Jameis Winston, 4, this Indiana team, number 3, Alabama of 2020 at number 2, and then the LSU team of 2019, which finished 15-0. Even my Indiana T-shirt that I'm wearing today, and all the money I paid for my son to go there, I still don't think I could gin up enough to make a case that Indiana was better than them. And then you look back on different eras. The Notre Dame team, and this is circumstances maybe that you could look at might be similar. That not that you were paying over the table money, but the way this Indiana roster is constructed, the average age of 23, I think that makes a difference. Notre Dame, 1946 to 1949, that's 4 seasons. They finished 46-0-2. No losses, 2 ties. They had Johnny Lujack and Leon Hart along the way. Both of them won Heisman trophies. And a big reason, if you look at those years, 1946 to 1949, that was after World War II. And you had a lot of soldiers with eligibility, and they were grown men. And the things that they had seen fighting a war were a lot different than the 18, 19-year-old kids that they were facing who hadn't been to war. These were real men. And these men, over that 4-year period with eligibility remaining because they had been in the service, and in some cases they were 22, 23 years old, that made a difference. But you can only compare it to the era that you're in. And in this era, this recent era, last 10 years, this is where they rank Indiana at number 3. Pretty cool stuff. As for more on the historical significance of what they did, finishing 16-0, Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, calling the game last night on ESPN, discussed it with Scott Van Pelt.
Well, I doubted in the modern era you're going to have a 16-0 team win a national championship. I thought it was going to be very challenging to do, and it's Indiana, of all teams, of all programs, that ends up doing it. Look, they earned the bye. They went out to Pasadena, and they were not just happy to be there. They dominated Alabama. Many thought Oregon was going to get them in the return match. That was a first-round knockout. This was a different kind of game. And Indiana had to show the kind of resolve, Scotty, they'd showed through their regular season. We talked about the comebacks and the responses by Mendoza. They had to respond again and again because Miami wouldn't go away.
Yeah. I mean, halftime we were talking, boy, we thought Miami would come in and have a little bit more fight. And I think when they got the stop, Scott, in the second half, I said to Chris, you could feel the momentum just on the stop before the Fletcher long touchdown. You could feel the crowd felt we need to play with more urgency. The team felt second half, new half, and then they had that long touchdown. And I thought to myself, we're about to have a heck of a second half. This is about to be game on. And then, of course, it went back and forth. But just being from the Big Ten and growing up, never expecting Indiana. Indiana's one of those stadiums that the visiting teams, the big schools, fill up their stadium. That's kind of who they've been most of their lives as fans. And to see this, I've seen these for years, but I think there's such gratitude and appreciation, sincere gratitude and appreciation from this Indiana fan base that this party is going to last for a long, forget tonight, this is going to go for a few days, I think.
Michigan a couple years ago, Scotty, 15-0, Ohio State, and now you got back-to-back for the Big Ten. Yeah. And between 69, the year after Woody Hayes won at Ohio State, and the playoff here, they've won a total of 3 in that span. So it's a seismic shift.
No question, and we think about the run the SEC had, and it was the fact that there were many different teams among them, whether it was Florida or Alabama or Auburn or LSU. And now you see in order Ohio State, Michigan, and now Indiana, improbably. And I agree with what you said, fellas, at the end. Like this is not going to go away. It's not just the billionaires that are throwing their support behind it. It's this massive alumni base that passed the hat to help in this modern era with the tools that are available to them to help bring these guys there. I'm interested just in the plays that happened along the way, that like Becker makes a huge catch, but it's that guy right there, a Heisman Trophy winner. We heard Coach say he rolled the dice, and you better be right. And it feels like he pressed every correct button, and then they get the stop in the end. It was just a remarkable second half for a team that was able to absorb a punch, Chris, when they had to.
They did. And Kirk and I, we talked about that play. Yeah, the run is going to be replayed forever, but the call should not be forgotten. They had a chance to go up 10 there and really put pressure on Miami. A field goal, and it's a 6-point game. That would have felt like maybe Miami actually had momentum off that stop. Instead, he felt good about the play. He went into granular detail about how they blocked it up and why they rolled the dice. Terry Mendoza, though, taking the 2 shots in the course of that run and just going airborne. I'll never forget that.
No, and I do think that the call, if you think about it in the modern world of the NFL, the analytics, I mean, it makes sense because of what's at stake there. You got a chance to make it a 2-possession game late. If you don't get it, your defense has been playing well for most of the game, and you got them pinned at around the 15-yard line. So I'm sure they went back and forth during that timeout, but the right call was made. What a call by Mike Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, along with Cignetti, to trust their guy. He's been at that high red zone area. That's usually where he runs the ball. And one Miami safety came down, the other one did not, so he had room to cut to the right and then took it into the end zone. But a gutsy run, and a great way for us to kind of put that exclamation point in the year that Mendoza's enjoyed this year, winning the Heisman.
Amen to that, and that puts a cap on college football, undefeated Indiana. Hard to get your head around that, but that is the last college football game of a season that began in the brutal heat of August and ends as we're shivering here in late January. That's it for me today. I very much enjoyed talking about the Hoosiers. Much less Hoosiers tomorrow, but more sports. Bram is next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.